All right, I'm talking. Chris, you talk. You do. Hold on a second. No one talk yet.
We are up and running though.
No, now we're good. I forgot to do the audio. Guys, we are live. Sorry, tons of technical issues once again. We're kind of out of practice here. Let us know in the chat right off the hop how we sound. If anyone's too loud or too quiet, I'll do my best to fix it. Chris, it's episode 75. Take her away.
Yeah, guys, the problems are all Ryan. I mean, we all know this. It's the producer's fault.
Not me.
It's not a Matteo thing. He was on time and ready, professional. It's Ryan. Actually, seriously, it's probably Ryan this time. I think his computer's might be in its dying breath, so we'll see. So Ryan's got a 4090 in his future coming.
Maybe.
If you guys haven't noticed, we've got a new face in the in our episode today. Matteo from Matteo311. One of my favorite VR channels, actually. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your butt. You have been somebody that I wanted to have on the podcast simply because I have always admired your channel for. I was saying to you off air here, for definitely like not being afraid to take a stand. I feel like, and you were the perfect person to have on this episode because a lot of what we wanted to talk about, I think, was just.
I believe you fake pooped on your Quest, if I recall correctly. Your Quest 2? Is
yeah.
that me?
Who said it was fake?
Yeah, it's a brown Quest now. It's the only brown Quest on the market.
Yes.
But you know what? I honestly just you were a perfect person for this episode because we are going to be talking about, I think, kind of some toxicity that I'm starting to see, and it just feels. I was saying to Ryan before the show, I'm like, it feels like everybody is kind of like taking their corners. I said it's like in high school. In my high school, we had like a rotunda in the middle of the school, and there was like kind of like there was like the jock corner, there was the Asian corner, and it was like I feel like that's what's happening in the VR community
very
a little
clicky.
bit. Yeah, and it's not not a good feeling. It's not a good thing to see these days, and I it seems like it kind of the PSVR 2 and some of the passion that's come out from certain communities around that seems to have like pushed some people's buttons. I don't know, but we wanted to talk about, I think, that and kind of what's fueling that, how we can fix this, how we can bring people together, because I really do feel like VR is way too new for us to start picking corners and hating on groups, especially when it comes to
except for those Quest users.
Yeah, except for the Quest guys. Fuck them. No, I mean, it's like...
You mean the majority of the community, unfortunately.
That's right. We're trolling them now. This is what we're trolling them.
Audio levels seem perfect. That's great. So, yeah, anyways, I'm rambling away around our topic that we'll jump into. But again, just thank you, Matteo. I guess for anyone who doesn't know your channel, you're more well known than us, so they should know you. But why don't you just give us what's your deal?
Yeah, it's primarily I do VR like discussions these days, or I'll like put together lists. So how I got started with YouTube was, well, I was just blown away by VR, like right off the bat. I needed a creative outlet in life. I've always kind of liked video editing and stuff like that. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna start posting about VR. It should help me get more into this community. Should maybe help me meet some people. And I just think VR is amazing, and I want to share it with other people. There were a couple people I was watching back in the day, like Ben Plays VR and Tyrell Woods and a couple other people, MRTV. And I was always looking for specific content, and like a lot of people didn't make what I was looking for. So I just started making the content I was looking for as I got more involved and more educated on VR. And that's kind of how I got my start. So I do make lists of videos, like what are the best games out there, what are the free games, what games you should start with. But then I do a lot of like discussions on what's going on in the industry, like the toxicity, stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's again another reason why we wanted to have you on there, because one of the reasons Ryan and I started the podcast was we wanted to have some of those discussions that were like not just about what's the new game this week. We wanted to have some like real discussions around things that we thought like impacted like the VR industry, the community, usually from a gaming standpoint, because we're definitely gamers first. Like we don't pretend to be necessarily like super up on like all the advanced XR things that are happening were definitely from a gaming standpoint. But I totally agree with you. That's how I started this too, was the fact that I wanted to see VR game reviews that I wasn't seeing. I wanted to know more about a game before I bought it, and there just wasn't
Yeah.
that wasn't out there, right? So I actually really like your reviews too, though. You don't do them that often, but when you do, they're always awesome.
So I don't do them that often for two reasons. One, I make sure I complete a game before I review it. I just feel like I'm dishonest if I don't finish the game first. So that takes a lot of time. Also, they're like harder to edit and just like, I don't know, they don't flow as easy for me.
Oh
So
yeah,
they're harder to actually make, but also I get less back. Like the community doesn't respond as well to my reviews or my gameplay. So I do them less, you know?
yeah. Oh, I have no problem with you not doing reviews because I don't want the competition, but I do like them when you do them. I always enjoyed how you broke them down too. How you'd be like, "Okay, this is like combat. Then we're going to
Yeah.
talk about spell casting. Then we're going to talk about crafting." That was something that you started doing that I was like, "Man, we need to start doing that." Before we move on, I just wanted to say, Salvador, you're awesome. Thank you so much for the super chat. I like this. Glad to see that Shug got his voice back from getting a second headset from the back of Walmart. You don't know. You don't know what I had to do to get that headset, man.
So, I mean, before we get directly into the topic, on the heels, or I guess before the topic, would be Switchback, and we've all played Switchback in some way, shape, or form, and we all have our, this is kind of today's been, there's been so much backlash, yesterday and today in regards to the game, especially now that it's out, attacking creators for not saying what this game is or isn't. Even and just the fact this game may or may not have delivered on some of its promises and so on and so forth. So it's been a lot more negativity surrounding this game, and it kind of comes into the topic of of this fanboyism, or this fanboyism works in regards to VR, and the fact, because this thing didn't live up to expectation, people have just been slamming it and going after game creators. We haven't seen too much of that because we were actually getting the other side of that, where we gave the review, or I shouldn't say we, Chris gave the game a 6.5 out of 10. And
it's a we. I have to live with the 9 you gave.
I haven't played this. I only played a level and a half yet, so I can't say for sure. But there's immediate backlash in regards to, not like entirety, but there's definitely people who are just like, they don't know, they're just slamming this game for XYZ reasons. Some guys were accusing us of the agenda of trashing this game because we weren't getting, like, because Supermassive didn't invite us to their like demo event like a month ago. Apparently we were jealous of that, and so we're slamming the game. It's nonsensical. It's absolutely insane. Some of the stuff floating around there, and it's crazy. But it fuels the fire of this argument. But first of all, Switchback. I've only played a level and a half, so I can't say too much other than I do agree with what Chris said in his review in regards to the blurriness and the fact it does kind of look like a PSVR 1.5 version of Rush of Blood. Now I know, Matteo, you've played, I'm sure, a lot more than I have. You put your little video out there. I guess this channel should know what we think of this game, more or less. Matteo, what do you think of Switchback?
Okay. So I didn't play Rush of Blood, so we should put that out there. I got my PlayStation VR pretty late in the game. I wasn't big on PlayStation VR. Only had a handful of titles. Some of them I love, but I didn't play as much PSVR. So maybe that changes the expectations. I went in with, okay, this is going to be gimmicky crap. That was my expectation. I knew Supermassive's previous games. I know the quality they can produce, but just this type of title, I'm like, this is going to be gimmicky crap. And now I do agree with the level of fidelity is lower than what we're seeing in PlayStation VR 2. It's not on par with Horizon or GT7 or Resident Evil 8, but I don't think the majority of VR games we're going to get on the PlayStation VR 2 will match that quality. But when people are saying blurry, I'm like, it doesn't look blurry at all to me. Like, not at all. I mean, I think... And I was looking for more. I was looking for reprojection, because reprojection is horrible in Horizon. It is terrible. So I was looking for more. I was looking for reprojection. I was looking for, almost like the screen door effect that this headset gives because of the pixel array based on different colors. You can see this grid-like pattern.
Mira! The dirty words.
There's a couple different separate issues with the headset, and it's very hard to say when it's specifically what.
I know,
but I would not say this game is blurry, and it looked clean and crisp to me. I thought the lighting effects were good. It felt smooth when you're riding fast. When the creatures are up in your face, they're crystal clear. Maybe we could add some, higher texture quality in some areas, but blurry, no. Slightly dated graphics, yes.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Oh, go you, Chris. I introed. You go.
I do think it's blurry. I think it's low res. I think it's running at a lower resolution than I think expectations were. I think I was saying to Ryan that one of the things that I'm this has been on for years now, but any game I jump into, as soon as I see the opening logos where it's like say Supermassive Games or Unreal Engine, blah blah blah. If those are jaggedy, I'm like, oh no, here we go. Sometimes
so every Quest game ever.
Yeah.
Almost. But yeah, I was gonna say sometimes
not jagged. It looks washed. You see, jaggy. I wouldn't say jaggies, but it looks washed out. Like it looks like it's been.
I would say jagged edges.
I would
say jaggy too. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I would say jaggy. Although sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes the game does look really great. They've just worked their magic in it. But I'm just saying, a lot of times it's usually like, oh, okay. And as soon as Supermassive, the logo jumped in, and then the switchback, I was like, oh no. And the loading screen with the medallion, I was like, oh my god. I definitely just noticed that, you're right, it's not going to be a Res 8. It's not going to be a G. They're not all going to be those games, and I don't need them to be. I mean, that's something I think that was very clear. Is I don't need them all to be fantastic graphics. I thought the Light Brigade was a really great looking game. Post patch on the PSVR 2, but over on the PC. I don't mind the art style. It doesn't need to be gorgeous graphic for me. I just wanted it to be clean. And I did feel like I felt like Switchback was disappointingly low res compared to what I think we, again, maybe expected for the next gen. I said in my review, there's multiple things in this game that make me think that it was a PSVR developed for PSVR 1, shelved probably because the PSVR 1 was kind of in its
end of life,
in its dying stage. Yep. And then brought back and finished. And a couple of things with that is the lower res textures, the fact that the game itself, it's not using dynamic foveated rendering. I don't think it's running at the highest resolution that we could definitely see. Like Light Brigade, for example, got a patch and it's night and day. Now that it's got a resolution bump.
So I have comments on that and a whole bunch of other things. First, just to address the chat, I think Horizon Call of the Mountain looks stunningly beautiful. The game looks amazing. However, it is some of the worst reprojection I've ever seen. Now, some people are like,
it's all over the place if you look for it. Yep.
Some people are just like, no, you're completely full of it. It did not ruin the game for me at all. But if you know what you're looking for, it is bad.
I think it's actually, I think it's also even context. I think some people just also are more sensitive to reproduction than others in regards to how much they notice it. Where, I totally agree. There is reproduction in Horizon. It didn't ruin the game for me. I definitely noticed it, but it wasn't like, meh, reproduction, but it's there. And I can really turn my brain off to the shortcomings of VR in regards to a lot of the things that, mirror effect, screen door effect, blah, blah, blah. I can kind of turn my brain off to that where it won't bother me. Whereas some people, it's just like I can't get past that. The screen door, no, I can't. No, and that's okay, fine, sure.
And that's an important factor right there because each one of these nuances affect us differently.
Yeah,
like the reprojection is terrible for me. Some people it doesn't bother them at all. Chris, you thought the lower resolution was disappointing you, but here's the thing: if that would have been in the full 4K resolution, running at 60 frames with reprojection, I guarantee the game would be dog shit. It would have been terrible. And this is the compromise. VR is, you're constantly making compromises with VR.
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to talk. I do know that Supermassive Games had an emergency meeting today to address what went wrong in the game. And I'm like, what? Like, how are you surprised? But so that to me is interesting. I just feel like, again, without being like, on the development side of the game, it just struck me as surprising that a game that's on rails, that, that compared to like, say, like what we've seen the PS5 push out, it just seems like this game, we should expect it to be running at a higher resolution. Is with even if they are using dynamic foveated rendering. I'm sensitive to frame rate and resolution. I definitely am guilty of that. The reprojection issue is less of an issue for me. Depending on the game, I guess. Like, I don't like Resident Evil 8, I think is one of the most beautiful VR games I've ever played, especially what they're pulling off with the level of detail in that game.
Yeah.
It's not perfect, and I do see reprojection. Like when you're smooth turning, it's probably the least smooth game out there. When you're using the smooth turning option, I just don't let it bother me because I think one thing I saw in the chat there that I think that some people may be confused with is that reprojection to me is not necessarily, it doesn't mean that it's not buttery smooth. Typically, it's getting that smoothness because of reprojection. Like GT7 is just a flawless racer as far as frame rates that it's feeling. If you're looking for the flaws in how they got there, you can find them, especially if you have a car drive around you in multiplayer and you can see the ghosting of the car.
Yeah.
It might be a necessary evil. I guess I at risk of breaking embargo, I will say that I am playing a highly anticipated PSVR 2 game that's coming out next week, and it's beautiful. And I think it's hitting a native 90, and it's not reprojected, and it's gorgeous.
Okay.
I don't know if you've played said game,
I know what you're talking about. I haven't fired it up on PlayStation though.
and it is beautiful. Like, and I think that that's going to be one of those games where I think that people are going to hold that up to, say, maybe like a Switchback and go, well, how about this? Like,
Mm.
look at this.
I
It's
see.
beautiful.
I think Switchback's issue is more not that it doesn't look good enough, because I personally think it looks good enough. I think it's in the wrong price range.
I think that, and I think the one thing we didn't really say is expectation. And Matteo, you said you didn't play Rush of Blood, and Rush of Blood. I mean, for myself, I originally gave that Rush of Blood a 6.5 out of 10. Went back years later, re-reviewed it 7.5 out of 10. It's a perfectly fine on the rail shooter for what it is, but what it did for PSVR 1 was it basically skirted all of its limitations in regards to tracking and everything else, and delivered arguably in some cases better visuals than what's in Switchback, and I'll stand by that one. I mean, some of the stuff in Switchback looks not good. Some of the models look a little bit dated, but my point being is that there was expectation that was Supermassive basically delivering a couple flops in Bravo Team and The Inpatient, and then kind of taking a step back away from VR, and then coming back with what essentially is Rush of Blood 2, and this game that helped launch the PSVR 1 and basically kind of, I would even say, like, helped carry it through its years. The idea of the PSVR 2, bigger, better, all this future tech, like, this should be a bigger and better Rush of Blood 2. And it doesn't feel like that. Even from what I've played, the game and a half or level and a half that I've played so far, it very much feels like more of the same. And that I'm talking both visually and gameplay wise, to a point where it's underwhelming. And I haven't played through it yet, but I just, so far from what I've played, it's what I expected. I didn't expect to be blown away by this, just because of Rush of Blood, but I expected, I expected, and I think a lot of people expected it to be substantially more better than what it is. And I think that's where all the hate is now coming from, is the idea that the ball was dropped. Pre-orders were up. No one got the memo until reviews went live of just, the shortcomings that this thing has. And those may be up for question depending on who you are. But I think, across the board, it still doesn't feel like a true born sequel to Rush of Blood. And I think that's ultimately the most disappointing thing, is that it's not meeting expectation. And because the backlash is, I don't think the backlash for this game is done yet. I think, honestly, as the more people play it.
Well, you know what? But it's interesting, because prior to jumping into this pod today, I was in a group, a VR group chat with a couple of guys that were actively playing Switchback, and they are definitely much more in line with Matteo. Like, they're like, this is fun. They're like
Yeah.
they're enjoying it, and it's like, and I said that in my review. I'm like, I'm not saying it's not fun.
Yeah.
I just I mean, if you go watch someone for a critical review, you're going to get a critical response. And from a critical standpoint, and I showed it in my review. I'm like, there's lots of pop in. I had assets completely just drop off behind me.
I didn't see any of that.
Man, it happens.
watch my
The
review,
second
there's-
you start the game up, you like that opening. There's shit popping like crazy. I couldn't believe. Like I knew Chris had talked about it, and he showed it in his video, and so I wasn't even looking for it yet, and it was already happening before. I was actually in shock at how poor
Not.
it was in the first impressions.
You should put my you should.
I mean, I have an hour of footage, and I've watched through it, and like I experienced the game. I didn't see that. I've watched through my hour of footage, and I didn't see any of that, which is crazy. That's weird that people get these.
Because I have a video. I was like, I got to back up what I'm saying, because I
Oh
knew
yeah,
it was
no,
hard
for
on the
sure.
game, right? And there's one part in the forest where it's like pop 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 pop, like it's the trees. It's like dancing. And then there was one part where I was kind of like going along the cart, and we were on the outskirts of a town or whatever, and there was kind of a barn and a fence, and I kind of looked off to the side, and the fence started disappearing, and I actually do a take back, and the whole thing just pops away. And I even said in my video, I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess who needs assets, I guess.
It's funny that
That's
Matteo didn't
really-
see it though. It really, and what let's just say Mateo's right. Matteo did not experience that. Then to me, there sounds like an optimization issue where there's like issues that they are not accounting for that are affecting performance, which is still
that it's not happening all the time, maybe.
yeah, which is how the hell do we know? Unfortunately, we can't test that.
I find that really curious. Like if I experience something like that, then that would that's pretty serious. And then I'd almost have to be like, all right, because I did sponsored content for this. They reached out to me and said, hey, because I don't really play horror games.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to play them on flat screen all the time. I don't really enjoy them as much on VR because I just want to chill and have a good time. But anyway, they reached out. I'm not going to turn down the sponsorship because they do this full time now, and it's a game I wanted to play. I'm not going to sponsor a game that I didn't enjoy. I'm not going to sponsor a game that I wouldn't normally play. So like this just was more incentive to just give it a try. And like I said, I didn't review it.
Congrats on that, though.
So like I said, I didn't review it. I put on the camera. I recorded an hour of my first experience
And
ever.
a heart rate monitor. Don't forget.
And a heart rate monitor. and I just cut it down to just keep it a little bit more interesting. And that's it. And I'm not one of those people who like hams up their gameplay. Like a lot of times when I play, I don't make a sound. If I'm making a sound while I'm gaming, I'm like really into it. I'm usually just quiet and chilling. So I can't ham up. I can't do those videos over the top. Like, oh my God, let's start screaming. That's not me. So yeah, I had some genuine reactions there. I had some genuine reactions there. And I went in getting like, all right, this is going to be gimmicky. It's going to be cheesy, like nothing too special, maybe really scary. And it just wasn't like from the second it started moving, I'm like, oh, this is fun. It's an arcadey shooter. So the shooter is kind of throwaway. But I was like, oh man, this is fun. And every moment, something wacky is happening. Just keep me engaged. Like it's a jump scare. There's blood dripping from the ceiling. Now you're under a river of blood with bodies falling down. Now there's floating caskets. Now the boss fight with the lady is the creepiest thing ever. Just the way she runs and stuff. I just I felt every moment intriguing and fun. And normally I'm looking for depth in a game. And I was willing to overlook all that because I was just enjoying my ride.
Yep. And that's what Rush of Blood did so perfectly. And so it would be interesting if one of these days, if you ever haul the old PSVR 1 out, I'd be interested to know what your take is on it, because I think that you
needs a PS4 too. Unfortunately, it won't work on a PS5. Yeah,
I still got one.
I think
Nice.
I think you're definitely proof. And what some people asked me in chat was that not having the expectations or the experience of the first one. Because what I had said in my review at the end of it, I said, the feeling I was having a hard time putting my finger on how I felt ultimately about this game, because I did feel underwhelmed. And I said, you know what? It reminds me of seeing like a sequel to a movie that I loved, where it has the same cast, but it has a different director and writer, like has a different creative team, but the producers still wanted to put it out, and the movie just feels like it hasn't recaptured that magic, or it just doesn't feel like it has the same quality. It feels like it's checking boxes. That's
Mm,
and but it's like if you haven't seen the first one, if you haven't seen the first movie, you might just be like, this is awesome.
yeah.
Um, I referred to it as like Die Hard 2. It was like, yeah, Die Hard 2 is great. But if you've seen Die Hard 1, then you're kind of like, it just something was missing. It just didn't have that thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I felt about this game. But but then to kind of segue into our primary topic, I was pretty surprised at the feedback that we have seen. um Mostly that we've been on the side of the people that were disappointed, so we haven't necessarily gotten the veracity that we've seen some people have. But I was saying to Matteo here that I saw that Gamertag had to post a comment saying, like, guys, I don't walk away from comments, and I just want to address the fact that, like, when I because let me back up here. The Some of the heated input that people have been saying is that they feel they were portrayed by certain influencers who say went to Supermassive and played the game and put out preview content, and we're just like, this is amazing, it's so much fun. And first of all, my take on that is, like, when you see actors going around on late night talk shows and they're being asked about their movie and they say it's awesome and they loved making this movie and then it's the best one in the series, you always have to take that with a grain of salt, just because
Yeah.
you just have to know the beast. They're on a
Yeah.
promotional tour, and when someone like, GT or Oasis or Matteo or any of us have been invited to something where we get to put a preview, there's usually restrictions, things you don't talk about, things that they just ask you to not compare it to or whatever. You just have to know that. And I feel like some people, you're getting duped by that. Well, then you got to take a
Yeah.
little
This
responsibility
is
there.
actually a great topic. This because as content creators, we're always accused of being chills no matter what.
Yeah.
In the same week, I was called a PlayStation VR hater, a Quest hater, and a PC VR hater in the same week.
Oh, didn't
And I'm
people
like,
know? Matteo hates VR. That's why
I'm like, yeah, apparently I just hate VR. But then, like, 5 comments later is like, you're a meta fanboy, stopping the PSVR 2 fanboy. And it's just like, you just can't have an opinion. Like, I can say 5 positive things about PlayStation VR and 5 negative things. And then some people only hear the negative things and, like, you're a jerk. And some things people only hear the positive things and, like, oh, well, I guess that means you're a fanboy. And it's crazy. I'm usually down the middle. I try and be like, listen, nothing is perfect. Nothing is perfect. Here's the crap issues. And some people just get mad when you say, listen, this headset that you love, these are its issues.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't love it. Doesn't mean it's not great. It just has these issues. Well, don't talk about the bad stuff. Well, this helps them improve the next one. Or let's just be
Yeah.
realistic.
I
That's
completely
it.
agree with that. If you're not, I have always said, as a, like, I think all of us have probably experienced this, but as someone who is highly critical of games, there's been times where I'm like, man, I was really hard on that game. And then I get an email from the developer saying, like, hey, the team loved your video.
I've been there
You know
too.
what I mean? We've gotten we've taken all your issues into account, and we just want to would you retry it and let us know what you think? And I was like, here I was thinking that, like, I was being like a kind of a dick, and I try not to be. Like, I try to be very, like, unbiased and just, like, and try to tell it like it is. And that's one of the reasons we wanted you on this episode too, because we know that you kind of cover all things VR and try to be, like, unbiased about it. Like, like, not everything's great,
Yeah.
and we're not the PSVR grid, you know what I mean, for a reason. And so that's just I like getting that feedback sometimes when I'm like, okay, I'm actually helping here, hopefully, because I feel like if you're not honest, well, then how do you get better things?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of piggyback off of that, I mean, obviously, we're not the PSVR grid, but right now our coverage is largely PSVR 2 based. And I frankly, I was so happy to kind of like not retire my Quest headset. It's not retired, but to put that away for a while and kind of enjoy premium VR again. It's been a
Yeah.
while. I mean, the Quest has, it's dominated the market, and it to a point where it's directed the market, where games are being developed for that. First, I've talked to developers who have said they can't get their games funding for their games unless they promise a Quest port or a mobile version of that game, right? So they can't just sit there and as much as they want to make the PC build of this massive, awesome plan they have. If their publisher's like, yeah, we'll fund you, but you need the Quest version, well, then it shoehorns these developers into making it. And so my point being is that, like everything in the last 2 years almost has been like Quest exclusive, or a version comes on the PC, but it's still built around the Quest first, and then get
Questified.
yeah, right. You get better textures and everything else on the other versions. So it's nice to kind of get away from that. As much as I love the Quest, it's we're comparing Game Boy to N64. It's not the same thing, and it's not the fairest comparison. But it's a mobile platform versus or something powered by a PC or a console, and there is a difference in there. And I'm so like going back to Horizon or going into Horizon GT7. It feels like a palate cleanser is not the right term, but it's the best one that works as far as like kind of like just putting the Quest aside, and maybe now I can kind of like pick and choose on the Quest what I want to play, as opposed to like with spitting out reviews every week for us. It's a Quest review, it's a Quest review, it's a Quest review, and now it's like we have choices again, and it's great because those choices. I'm not saying Rush of Blood, Switchback could not run on the Quest 2. We're sitting here complaining that it's like it doesn't look that great. Me and Chris are, anyways, as far as like expectation.
Hey, but to be fair, in my review, I did actually say, because I caught myself, I was like, man, I'm being hard on this game, and I should also just be like really thankful that we're getting this too, because at the same time, it is so above bar. And I said, like, don't get me wrong, this game is better than most of the games that are coming out right now, graphics wise. And so it's like, I don't know, it's just kind of like you do have to review it at like at the pond that it's swimming in.
Yeah, for sure. And even to defend Supermassive, I mean, the PSVR 2 is an untested platform. So how much money are they supposed to sink into this thing? We don't know how much this thing cost. But I mean, as far as sales go, how many people are buying Rush of Blood? We don't know. I mean, it's a brand new market, and the PSVR 1 by the end, I mean, it's sold 5 million headsets for like 3 years now. So like it died a pretty quick death and just kind of carried on with what it had. So I could definitely see where there are just budgetary constraints in regards to like how much can we commit to this thing. Doesn't really matter. My point being is that we've gotten away from the Quest to a point where if someone were to call this channel like PSVR 2 fanboys, like us guys, I mean, one, we're not. It's just nice to have something different for a change and just enjoying it. And we're planning on covering Vertigo 2 right away, a couple of Quest games. We're not a PSVR 2 exclusive channel anymore, but if you were to come for the first time, it looks like we've just jumped ship and we are now on the fanboy bus, and that's not the case. But perception is reality.
But to your point, Ryan, I think that plays perfectly into some of the issues I think that we are seeing. Is that I think that all the channels, the VR channels, at least the ones I am paying attention to, the ones that a lot of us know, we all look like we've jumped ship to PSVR 2 to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Less you, Matteo, just because you haven't been covering games per se individually, so your content still feels a little bit less impacted by that. But it's kind of like, as VR fans in general, we're going to naturally gravitate to what's new and exciting.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? So
and that's what the audience also wants to see. And that's what
what's pulling views. I mean, it is a thing.
But it's not even a thing of pulling views. It's what excites us. What excites the audience is usually what excites us too.
But what's funny is that I don't know how much time you spend on, say, Reddit or Facebook, but if you jump into, say, Quest groups, they're just not a bunch of happy people. Like badly want to see PSVR 2 absolutely die because they hate it. Just makes them, I don't know if it's jealousy, I don't know if it's fear. Some of it's probably just genuine, like critics going, not what it's supposed to be. But I think that like I am seeing PC people jump into my review for GT7 going, yeah, man, like I think I'm buying a PS5 and a PSVR 2 for this game. I'm like, okay, I'm not telling you, I would never tell you to buy a system for one game. But the fact that you're seeing some PC guys go like, man, I feel like I'm missing out. There's
cool.
There's that buzz to it, and I think just like IGN and your big media, especially back 7 years ago, seemed like almost like wanting VR to fail because they didn't want to have to, like, they were afraid of it changing things. It seems
Yeah.
like the same thing.
It everything does feel weird. I've been discussing that with people lately. Things definitely do feel weird. Communities definitely feel different. Like we said in the beginning, it's a lot more clicky, which sucks. I agree because VR is still small. We really shouldn't be divided. But just to jump back to one thing that we were discussing earlier, a lot of people will say, "Oh, you're biased. You're biased. You're biased. You're a fanboy. You're this. You're that." There's a huge difference between being biased and just having preferences. Like I always tell people, listen, for the longest time, my first love in VR is PC VR. The only reason why that's diminishing is just no one's making exclusive PC VR titles anymore. And if they are, there's not much money behind it. So, it's much harder to continue to enjoy PC VR. And we got Hubris, and I know you guys didn't give that a very good rating. And it had its highs and lows. So like Vertigo 2, I'm pumped for. But besides that, come on, PCVR's got it's getting nothing. We're getting mods of flat screen games. That doesn't excite me as much.
Agreed.
I agree.
So, but there's a difference to say, all right, I have a preference. This is the platform I like. But that doesn't make you biased because you have a platform you like. You can still like I always try to do, say, listen, this is the platform I like. This is why I like it. But the Quest has the pros of being wireless and you can take it with you and yada yada yada. So like I understand the pros and cons, and certain things are more important to certain people. That's it. That's all it comes down to. Preference is not being biased.
No, yeah.
I mean, we all agree with that, but that's the problem is the fanboys that don't, or the second you say, like you said, say the wrong thing or say you like something more than you should like it according to the internet. Switchback 9 out of 10. I love this game. Whoa, how could you love this game? This isn't a 9. And the second you go outside of their box, well, you're either a fanboy or a hater, and it doesn't you can't justify that.
And people associate themselves with something they like so much, they take personal offense.
That's what I said.
You feel like,
yeah, it felt like when the comments I was getting on my review for Switchback, there were overwhelmingly, I think people were agreeing because we do have a lot of PSVR 1 people. Like Ryan and I both started as PSVR 1 mostly channels, and so that's carried over. So there are a lot of people who loved Rush of Blood, and it's not everything they hoped it would be. But there were some people that was like, you think I just told them their kid was ugly? Like they,
yeah.
they were like, the one guy's like, you know what? I haven't played this game, but I've seen the trailers, and you're wrong. I'm like, okay. And one guy really got into it with Ryan, and I came in and I said, hey man, I'm like, I was like, I took the high road. I was like, I'm genuinely interested in your opinion on this when you've played it. I'm like, so please come back and let me know what you think. And he came back today and he was like, yeah, I actually agree with most of your review. I was like, wow, I'm actually surprised at your honesty, and I also appreciate
that doesn't happen often.
Because I was like, because at the end of the day, I'm like, guys, I'm like, it is just, I am just someone with an opinion. I might genuinely lean towards being very critical and try very hard to be unbiased and try to find the right words. But it's still, at the end of the day, just a guy playing a VR game who had an opinion. And if you like the game, wicked. I'm glad you don't hate the $45 you just spent. But the comments, the viciousness in some of the feedback, it was like, just like they were like, how dare you say that this game isn't good? And I mean, one of the things that I guess the three of us cannot necessarily relate to anymore, at least maybe we could as kids, we have the privilege of having all the headsets. You can play it all. And if you're someone who doesn't have a ton of money, regardless of your age, and you kind of had to, like, you've got one headset, and for various reasons it might really bother you that you can't play a certain game. Like if you've got a Quest and there's no way you're getting a PSVR 2 or a PC, and you see GT7 and that's like your dream game, that sucks.
I'm not missing out. You're missing out. It's
a weird.
Fine.
it's like a weird defense mechanism. Like, you can't have access to that, so you have to just convince yourself that's crap. Like,
Yeah.
you have to convince yourself that thing that you can't have is crap to make yourself feel better. It's like a weird defensive mechanism.
Well, and even to go to the launch of the PSVR 2, as a matter of fact, and me and Chris were both critical of the launch in regards to the games releasing, because the majority of the games were Quest ports or PSVR 1 ports or whatever, and we said, like, as far as the launch goes, it wasn't the most exciting launch for us because we've played everything. Yeah. That being said, especially if you're even a PSVR 1 owner and this is your launch lineup, like, this is arguably, like, console, out of every console it's ever made, this is probably like one of the most packed launches for a console / headset in history. Like, it's crazy how much quality came with the launch of this thing. Yeah, it sucks it's Quest 2, but once again, that's just where the market is. But then all the hate surrounding that. Oh, it's just a Quest emulator. It's just and I said the same. I'll say the same thing. I said that, like, it does feel at times like a Quest emulator plus, but I never said it was never said with like hate or disdain. It was just like, but you see these comments that are just like, no, I'm not buying this because I already have a Quest. This is just garbage. Plus it's tethered and all this stuff. And to change focus a bit is the fact that VR is still growing. I mean, the whole last generation, I would argue it wasn't. I would say I wouldn't say it was a failure, but I wouldn't call it a success either. Between PSVR 1, Quest, and PC stuff, and I do think this PSVR 2 feels like, and the Quest 2, I guess, to kind of point out, it feels almost like the next go. Like, guys, that whole last generation, we got the kinks out. We kind of figured a bunch of shit out. We know what you like, what you don't like, hopefully. And now the PSVR 2 is gonna hopefully kind of push expectations, rather, or at least should bring it back to meeting expectations, where the Quest 2 might not be meeting the expectations in regards to like virtual reality. If I put a headset on, I'm now in a virtual world and it looks like Horizons. That's no good. But you play something like, well, just Switchback, where it's just like, oh yeah, like I'm in a roller coaster, shooting zombies. And I think for the average Joe who avoided VR, the PSVR 2 is the best thing to come along, better than the Quest, in my personal opinion, in regards to meeting that expectation of flat gamers who still think every game should look like Call of Duty. And VR is not there yet, but it's coming. My point being is that these headsets all have their place, be it Quest 2, mobile platform, Pico, PSVR 2, and even all the PC stuff that's coming. And they should be treated as like different members of the same family. And
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, because they all have their place. I mean, I said I was as happy as I was to kind of put my Quest aside for now. I love my Quest for what it does. The untethered freedom, and the games library is extensive at this point. It does good things. The tracking's on point. Like it's great for what it is. I'm currently loving my PSVR 2 because it's ease of setup and the quality of games I'm getting and hopefully going to continue to get. Whereas PC right now, it's not PC's fault, but right now my PC is giving me headaches to a point where playing VR on my PC isn't really working out for me. So it's nice to have this option of just the ease of use. So right now I'm enjoying the hell of my PSVR 2, but in no way in the world am I like throwing my Quest in the garbage and getting rid of my PC because I'm on that bandwagon now. And I think it's really important that people take a step back and realize, like, we are still trying to grow. VR could still fail's a strong word, but VR could still definitely see a lot more setbacks.
No, I mean, it could still fail. It really could. Some people don't want to accept that. Some people like fail. Okay, how do we define that term? But like, I'm sure there'll always, there's big use cases for it in virtual learning and stuff where the environment's not safe. They're doing it for virtual tours. It is a useful technology for sure. And I don't think all of a sudden, like, we'll be at a point where we'll never see a VR headset again. I don't think that'll happen. Will it eventually like merge into, XR, AR, like Meta thinks? Maybe. I don't know. But it could still fail as a gaming device. Because people don't remember, like, back in the day of Atari. Like, Atari almost killed console gaming permanently.
Yep, it was in a rough stage. Yep.
There were landfills of just cartridges.
And the price
that they just had to dump.
Too. Yep.
Yeah, like thousands upon thousands of cartridges. A full landfill full of Atari cartridges.
I feel,
because People didn't know.
I feel like about this idea of failing. I actually got into a conversation with a guy on Twitter. I don't know who he was, and it was a little bit heated, I think, until he realized what I was saying. Is that I had said that the Quest in some ways had killed PC gaming, even though the Quest might have also been the only reason that VR has managed to keep going and got to the levels that it has. But I do feel that the Quest 2 being the only place developers can make money has killed the, we're not seeing the games like when we were seeing like Stormland and and
Asgard's Wrath
and Echo VR and Half-Life Alyx and Asgard's Wrath and this big money that was being put into games. We're not seeing that right now. And I said because what it was is this guy was basically saying like, yeah, PSVR 2 is going to fail, and he's like, and I'm like, you better hope it doesn't. That's was what I said. I'm like, because PC VR needs the PSVR 2 to do well. Because I truly see that for those of us who want more premium VR titles, we want money's spent on VR games, and we want those AAA experiences. We don't want Echo 2 to be the last game that Meta puts that kind of money into. There needs to be a market for premium VR headsets, and PC, I don't see it doing it anytime soon. The barrier to entry is too high for price.
Yeah.
And you really need that accessibility of console gaming to, with the PSVR 2 to now, at least be playing in a similar arena.
Well, it's a simple question for PC VR enthusiasts. Do you want Quest ports or do you want PlayStation VR 2 ports? Because it's one or the other, and I'd rather have PSVR 2 ports.
Yeah. If PlayStation VR 2, and I spoke to some developers on this, if PlayStation VR 2 does hit around 5 million units rather quickly, which can or can't happen, depending,
that's going to have to do with this fall.
Yeah. So, if it does hit around, 5 million units, then they're at the point where they will consider developing games exclusively for PC/PlayStation VR 2.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you have, your 2-3 million PC members, and then you have your PlayStation, your 5 million on PlayStation. And the one thing is, you can charge more on PlayStation than Quest.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we've already seen that because, like I said, I think Switchback VR is overpriced. That's my only complaint about the game. But you can charge more. So if you can charge, maybe significantly more, it could be, okay, every one game on PC VR and PlayStation VR 2 is worth 2 games on the Quest. So it helps offset those numbers. Yep. To a degree. So they're in a tough spot, but I'm really rooting for them because I do want those premium games. And I honestly don't think the Quest 3 is going to deliver exactly what we want.
I agree.
It's going to come out of the gate. It's going to look like a significant upgrade, and it is. But even if you double the GPU power, it's still just nothing close to a PS5 or a PC. What the average PC user is using. I'm not talking a 4090.
Yeah.
So it's still not even remotely close. There's still so much amount of time and energy that has to go into optimization for developers, which limits the scope of the project. So, and then Meta is just like 100% sold on making this the next computing device. So we may see gimmicky things like, they really want to push pass-through and eye track. Well, not eye tracking, but they really want to push pass-through and AR modes. And
yes,
is that going to help elevate gaming? I don't believe so.
No, and eye tracking, I think would be, to me, for my money, that would be where you think they'd be definitely going to try to squeeze the most out of that processor to try to focus their resolution and stuff.
But when it comes to eye tracking, foveated rendering, okay, so I'm sure they'll put better panels in the Quest 3. However, no games on the Quest 2 run at 2K.
No.
None of them run at the native resolution. So if we put 4K panels in here, the games probably won't even they'll probably be running at 2K or less. And when you're at that resolution or lower, you don't really get a benefit from eye-tracked foveated rendering. Just use standard foveated rendering and call it a day. You don't get a benefit. Now, eye track foveated rendering is an eyesore for sure, but it's just easier. It just flip a switch, don't worry about it. It does its thing, and your games will run better.
I know,
And
and
that's
and
probably
that's
what
why
they'll stick with.
which is why I'm surprised though that that's not a priority. But I think that when I love like Ryan said, I love my Quest, but we're in this weird set time in VR where you've got all these people, say in the Quest Facebook group, bitching about the PSRC, it's not good, all the wire, blah 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 blah, blah. And, like wanting it somehow to like not fail so that they feel like their Quest 2 is great. I don't remember that kind of toxicity happening with like people who had their Game Boy or their PSP or their Vita. It was like we knew these were mobile devices. We never complained that they weren't pumping out like the graphics of our consoles.
Yeah, it's weird the lines have blurred as far as the headset and the fact that there's like the people expect parity between.
It's amazing
everything.
what that Quest is putting out. Like, I mean,
it is.
and I
Yes.
can see, and I can already see some of expectations. I'm like, oh no, I'm like the Quest 3, even if it's twice as powerful, is less than 4 teraflops. Because it's only 1.8 right now. The Quest 2. That's the PS5's 10. Your 4090 is like 100 teraflops.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I just think that people's like optimization is key on the PS5, and the Quest will be the Quest 3 as it is with the Quest 2. But you can only optimize so much. I still feel like the mobile market needs to be the mobile market, and
it makes a significant difference, the optimization. But you're right. The mobile, a lot of times, like with reviews and stuff, I almost feel like I have to put mobile games in a separate category.
That's what I mean.
For a mobile game, this is really good. For an overall VR game, I'm going to put this up next to Half-Life Alyx. No, like that's what it, like what it feels like. But I think another thing why we kind of like look down at the Quest in a way is because we experienced better before the Quest years ago.
Exactly. We talked about that in an earlier episode.
We experienced significantly better.
Yeah. That's what I think Ryan was kind of saying. That's what's weird about VR is that like 2016, 2017 VR, there are highs hit in that time period on PC that almost like really haven't been beaten in many ways. And so VR kind of almost reset like the PSVR 1, the VR made strides in it, and it was like kind of showed that okay, maybe VR can make some money here. And then kind of the Quest came in and it picked up that ball and it ran with it. Yep. And it kind of, but in doing so, it also then a lot of developers were like, let's put our games out again. Maybe we can make money this time. And so there was a reset.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're almost now with the PSVR 2, hopefully kind of like, okay, so now maybe some developers will take a swing at the higher end stuff again. But that all takes time.
Yep.
Years of development.
And it still has to prove itself. It still needs. Listen, you don't have sales if no one has the hardware.
Something Chris said there I want to come back to, and it really kind of sums, not that there any of this, but sums up kind of the argument here is the fact that he said, like, no one ever argued PSP is better than PS3. Like, there was never that conversation of, like, this is why it's better. Like, PSP kills your PS3 or PS2, whatever.
You have to be wired.
Right? Like, that just didn't happen. So why does it happen in VR? And why is it, like, allowed? Like, that shouldn't happen. Like, there should be a pretty clear divide, and I guess this is partly, the market's fault for doing this in regards to so many ports to other Quest games first porting over, but it shouldn't be allowed. Like, my Quest is better because XYZ. Well, it's a dumb argument.
I think why that exists is because Quest became the market.
Yeah.
Quest is the norm. So like there were a lot less people going around with, like handheld devices back in the day compared to the number of consoles that were out there. I mean, some handhelds sold really well, but I mean, and then you kind of knew, like, okay, yeah, we're gonna shrink it down, and you're gonna get what you're gonna get. But Quest became the norm. Quest 2 became the norm. Quest is like what most people recognize as VR, and it makes sense because there's 20 million headsets out there.
Yep.
So to kind of say like, no, that's not VR. This ancient in VR terms, this 3-year-old. What is it? It's a 4-year-old Valve Index is better. It's like, what are you talking about? That thing's too expensive. You need a PC. It's got a cable. Can't be better. Oh, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. And it is weird. Like I said, it's hard to wrap my head around it some days, just because of how toxic it can be. And I would love for the takeaway here to just be like to stop, just stop, stop attacking, stop. The second a PSVR game Switchback doesn't do or meet expectation, you can't sit there on the quest side and be like, yeah, that's because it sucks and it's underdeveloped, and that's the kind of games you should expect for the PSVR 2, and vice versa in regards to some of the ports we've seen on Quest, some of the games we've seen that have definitely not met expectation in regards to stuff like, I mean, just randomly like Cities VR or something like that, where performances. These developers are pushing the Quest to its absolute limit. We're seeing it now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess Saints and Serious is a way better example in regards to pushing it to its limit. And you're seeing
these. You mean retribution?
Retribution. Sorry, not the Retribution.
In regard maxing that thing.
Maxing it and still under, and it doesn't look great. I dove into that yesterday, and I couldn't believe the amount of pop in, the complete lack of textures on zombies. Like it's a bad.
I abandoned it. I abandoned it on Quest 2.
It's bad.
I said, like, a game like this, I want to be immersed.
Yep.
I want to be in the world. I don't want zombies popping out of thin air in front of me. It's already scary enough. It doesn't need to unintentionally make it more scary.
I can hear you. Just pop out
like.
And I thought they would have fixed that. I mean, because I never played when it launched. Only Chris played the Quest version. I never really did. So I kind of thought, I know they'd released a couple patches. So I was kind of expecting to go into a much smoother experience. I wasn't expecting mind blowing. I was expecting a smoother experience. And every single issue that was brought up back in December, I experienced within 15 minutes of playing the game. I was like, really? Like still? Like, and to me, that's just, I don't think the developers, I can't remember the name right now, are lazy. I just think. Skydance, thank you. I just think the Quest 2, I think they're just hitting that max point, and it's either deliver the game as it is, or Quest doesn't get it, and that it becomes a battle where
money.
Money is always a factor.
I mean, let's be honest. The Quest 2 version pretty much probably funded the development of the game,
probably,
but at the same
time, they didn't want to miss Christmas.
Exactly, big time. Which I think that maybe they regret that in the past, because I think it did some damage to their reputation. Like, I was talking to a VR group again earlier today, and we were all saying, Skydance they kind of took a shot a little bit, because we didn't expect them to release something that sloppy. Like Trivia has fallen from grace a little bit, and
I mean, my experience, the first scene, the first what's called in-game scene where the guy gets killed up above and like throws some stuff down to you.
Yep.
It didn't trigger. So the door never opened.
Yeah.
Yep. I had that too.
And I spent like 20 minutes in that room. Like, what is wrong with this game?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
that's a very first impression.
Yeah. Like I said, I know they dropped a pretty big patch at within a month after that, but I'm not disagreeing with you at all. Like, you release it like that, and I experienced the same issue on the PC build, I believe, where it's the same thing. I'm just like, what am I? And this guy's just standing up there. I'm like, am I missing something? And that's just poor. Like, there's no excuse for that. I can't excuse them for that at all.
I mean, but back to what we were originally saying, though, is that I think that the Quest 3 needs to be a success. I'm cheerleading it to be a success. I want it to do well. I want PSVR to do well. I want Valve to bring another index out. I want all these things. And I may use them in different capacities. I think that I'm concerned about the Quest 3. I mean, there was an interview with John Carmack who was saying straight up, he's like, we have hit a wall when it comes to mobile chips. He's like, we can't get any smaller. He's like, and until there is a sizable leap in technology, he's like, we're at a point where we can only get a little bit bigger now. Like, it's, there's not like this untapped resource.
And that's why we might be entering the era of the puck.
Yep.
So I mean, if you see what's going on with Apple VR, you listen to the rumors, or some information is confirmed. They had to take some stuff off the headset, like the batteries are gonna strap to your forearms or something.
I heard
so that. Because there was it was just getting too hot and too many issues. because they really want to push that thing hard. They really want to have an amazing first impression. So we might need some additional external processing. But, having to be in a room and send the signal from a PC is not the answer. So can we get some additional processing from tethered devices, but tethered onto your body? Is that the direction we're going to have to go? And I would be okay with that. Like if I had, one wire going down my back and something clipped onto my waist, I would be okay.
Oh, a cable, Matteo?
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
The Quest
it's
3
still
is
tethered.
Well, I see Matteo at Quest 5, 6 years down the road here. He's like, we've entered the backpack era, people. I've got a PC.
We're going backwards, man.
I've got a 4090 on my back. But I mean, but you're seeing this dilemma with chipsets. You're seeing it in PCs too. Like the 4090 is a beast. It's big. Some people have had to go up and get bigger. My brain's
towers.
Not right. Towers, yeah. Cases.
I have the most ridiculous sized tower, and if I flick on my camera, hold on one second.
While he's flicking on his camera. Oh, this isn't too bad. He's right there. I mean,
we're gonna be able to see. He is set for porn. Like,
yeah, Matteo's OnlyFans channel.
Yeah, we don't know. That's what we don't see.
There's nothing there. It's fake.
Matteo XXX. Matteo After
one.
Dark.
So this can hey.
Oh,
hey.
There
you go.
So I have the world's biggest case. It is just because I just never want to run out of room. That's my whole thing. So the case here is just tremendous.
Is that a yaw I see there?
Yeah, this yaw over here. My room, this place is a freaking mess.
Jealous of your yaw.
But yeah, so I mean that is the biggest case on the freaking planet, and I put it in there, and I'm like, oh my God, how is anyone else going to survive?
I know.
Like, how are they going to get this thing in here?
So I feel like when people, again, like when this fanboyism kicks in, it's like Matteo's got a suitcase under his desk running his PC right now. The PS5, people are like, oh, it's huge. I'm like, that's impressive to me. I mean, I have a GPU the size of my PS5.
Yeah, pretty much.
I guess it's everything in perspective. But again, this attitude of fanboyism, though, I expect this from the Facebook groups. I expect this from the average consumer that has decided to place their flag in a certain headset. To a certain degree, I wish it was a little bit more friendly and constructive than sometimes it has been. I hope that settles down a little bit, but I've been seeing it from some of the influencers as well too. Ones who have made their channels primarily covering PC, because again, as PSVR 1 guys first, we noticed that a lot of the big YouTube channels, they couldn't be bothered with PSVR 1. I mean, console, no. I see them like there's a bit of I see a little bit of pushback on sometimes in Twitter and in some of their videos. Some of them are really celebrating the PSVR 2, but there's this sense of kind of like, oh, I have to cover the PSVR 2. I guess that's where the clicks are going to be. Like I am definitely seeing some people. There's a little bit of snarkiness in some of their responses when the PSVR 2 was doing well and everyone was talking about it. They're like, yeah, guys, but this is not. It was kind of like almost wanting it to fail a little bit because they really wanted PC to be the master race still. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading into it.
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to really know someone's true intent. There's some people who are just amazing at like faking it. So like they just like they put on a facade and they play a character and you're like, oh my God, this guy's so jolly and loves everything and whatever the case may be. Other people have no poker face. And there's some people like me who don't give a shit and just gonna say what they're thinking. And like there have been a few times where I'm like, okay, maybe I was a little bit too critical of this or that. But honestly, I try and evaluate everything. And it's really hard to know what someone is truly thinking. So I try and say, okay, to me, it looks like that person might be jaded. They might be upset, but Am I projecting? Do they really feel that way? Did they not portray themselves well? Because I've done that a million times. Like I've had one specific like feeling, and then I came off in a different way. Because I could come off as a hater constantly. That's pretty easy because I come down hard on things.
Yeah, we do the same thing.
Yeah. So I'm
Sometimes
sure, like
think
I could see
sometimes
that.
too hard, I think, to be honest. Like, I mean, I looked at my review for Switchback, and I was like, was I too hard on it? Like, was I too hard on it because I was so disappointed that I expected better, and that especially after I mean, I don't know how well you know their history, being not a PSVR 1 guy, Matteo, but they did 3 PSVR 1 games. They did Rush of Blood first. 4?
They did that Tumblr game, that first one there, where you have to stack the blocks.
Don't
Hey,
count that.
hey,
I don't,
hey.
Nope. Okay. 3 titles. Rush of Blood, then what you call it?
Bravo Team.
Bravo Team and The Impatient. Both of which were just, they felt phoned in. They weren't great. They didn't work for various reasons. They just were not great VR titles. And maybe it irked me that I felt like this was much more like Supermassive of the later years than it was what we got with the brilliance of Rush of Blood. So maybe that affected my review. You know what? Like maybe I needed to take a step back. I don't know. I still kind of stand by my review at the end of the day, but I know what you mean though. Sometimes we come off maybe a little because we're people too.
We're also passionate though.
Yeah, I think that's the key. And then I've always said too, is in regards to finding, if you want to hate on a reviewer or hate on a person who slide the game, like you said, we're all people, and we all have different flavors, man. Like I don't like certain channels. I don't watch certain people I like whose content I don't like, and it's nothing to do with them. It's just my personal taste. My point being is that if you don't like a reviewer or you think a reviewer is too negative, don't watch them. It's the easiest thing in the planet to just find the channels you like. But I've had I had comments on, oh my god, what the hell was it? That's gonna bother me now. Where they came into the review to basically say don't trust reviewers. And I was like, but you're here. So what's going on right now? Like this is the crazy. Like you watch this video and then said don't watch these videos, but you're here. Like what is like it doesn't like. Do you understand?
The scenario is tough in general, though. It's real. Because, I mean, again, we all have different preferences, different expectations. And I try and say, like, when something is objective and subjective, like, especially with hardware, it's easier. With games, it's much more subjective.
Mhm.
The things that are objective are like, this game is buggy as hell. Like, that's where you could say, you could be objective, where you could start pointing out bugs and saying, like, there's a quality issue because of bugs. But generally, like, do you like the game is a very subjective thing.
For
With
sure.
a million attributes, like games we've played before, our expectations going in. So those all roll into it. So like, don't trust reviewers is bull. It could just be that person has a different opinion than you.
Mhm.
But there's that mentality out there that we're getting paid for our words.
Oh, I wish. I wish.
Exactly. I will. So like, I know you brushed up about contracts like earlier and say take certain things with a grain of salt. I mean, we're not, usually we have NDAs and we can't talk about certain things, but I will never sign a contract that doesn't let me speak freely. Now, you understand that like you run the risk of like really pissing off a company and they don't work with you in the future, but that's fine. And sure, maybe that may factor into how some people make their videos. I know some people who just only make videos about things they like. That's the way they tackle this.
Yep.
They only make videos about the things they like because they don't want to have to deal with upsetting someone or getting blacklisted somewhere.
Yep.
But I've never signed anything where it's like, listen, you have to say XYZ. You can't say ABC unless it's like, like you can't say our DLC release date, or you can't say this, or
Right.
please don't compare it to this. We don't like being compared to this. There's some things that I'll find acceptable, but for the most part, you're putting words in my mouth. We're not working together.
Yep.
End of story. If you're not letting me express my opinion, we're not working together. That's it. But these there by law, I mean, I'm sure it's a very easy law to break, but by law, anytime we're paid to make a video, we have to tell the audience.
Yep.
Mhm.
So if someone's not doing that, not only are they just complete jerks and giving us all a bad name, they're breaking the law. And the majority of these contracts also say, like, you cannot lie about your opinion in your video. So you like we signed a contract that said we won't lie and say we like it if we don't.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's so many things working against the fact that they think we're getting paid to say stuff, but people are just clueless on how this works. There's so little money in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's.
I mean, it's just such a joke.
Yeah, I mean, we both have day jobs that I definitely couldn't quit to do this. And I mean, I know you're a bigger channel than us by far, but I mean, you know, could you retire off your annual earnings off YouTube tomorrow? Like, it's
No.
right.
If I didn't make the right financial decisions and work in IT for 25 years, I wouldn't be able to do this full time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe if I was alone and didn't have kids, but yeah.
Oh, I've told people like what we've earned monthly, and some people are like, "Oh wow, that's awesome." I'm like, dude, if you decided to take the hours that I put into this channel and I gave you an hourly rate, I'm like, you'd go clean toilets. Like, I mean, and I've told people who are like wanting to get into YouTube and want to do like, you know, VR stuff or whatever, I'll be like, you gotta love it. You gotta like it. You gotta enjoy the editing. You gotta enjoy the creation process. Because if you don't, you will hate it. You will hate your life.
And in that respect, it is pretty easy to understand how someone would chill. Like, it's understandable. But in most cases, you're just looking to destroy your channel if you chill.
Yeah.
And
Like-
I agree with that.
Like, people will see through it for sure. No one will trust you. And maybe you'll make a few bucks in the short run, but then you're gone. Yeah, it's just gonna kill you.
I mean, I just think that for people, they just need to be aware of like, you know, watch who you want to watch. Know what their know what they do. Like, you know, some channels like us, you know, we mostly do game reviews. That's what we spend our time on because we're nerds and we like doing that. You know, but if you're watching some of the bigger channels that are getting, you know, they're doing a lot of first looks and stuff, you just have to know that like they're getting those first looks under certain requirements.
They've played ball.
Not
Just
even
like
not even played ball necessarily, but just the fact that you just have to know that like they're not, those videos are not designed to be critical videos. They're
well, it's kind of like the softball interview.
Yeah,
you know, like it's not a real interview; it's a softball interview. It's
where they've got the questions ahead
kinda.
of time. They're like, yeah, I don't want to talk about these things.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to talk about anything important.
And you said
ahead,
watch.
sorry.
You said, you know, you watch who you want to watch, but I think it goes beyond that, and it's contribute where you want to contribute. And coming back to the whole
That's true
fanboyism,
too.
and you know, because it's easy to surround yourself in your own like mindedness and get stuck in that whatever it is. So it just like realize that like not all these headsets are created equal, and that's fine. First of all, and second of all, like enjoy it for what it is or what it isn't, but don't sit there and just like throw hate for no better reason than because you don't have it or because you have this other thing. It's just dumb. Like it's asinine. And I'm not saying don't be critical. I'm not saying, you know, like absolutely, you know, have the conversations, but to just throw shade for no better reason than because of, you know, you don't have what they have or vice versa it's dumb. And like remove yourself from the situation and like find the groups that are positive, because the only thing that breeds hate is hate. It's that simple.
Yeah, you're right. But you know what? We do have like this type of, and I don't believe in human nature, but we do have this type of tribal mentality. You know, I believe in predisposition, not human nature. Like we're not destined to do certain things, but we have a disposition to be tribal. And without like proper education and like society reinforcing, like, hey guys, it's really stupid to go tribal and, you know, stick a flag in the ground and say PlayStation is better than Xbox and stuff like that. But there's this weird underlining, like you feel more in the community by hating the other team, and being part of a community feels good.
Yep.
So that's why we get tribal. It's really not good, and the only way out of it is education, and it's like too late for most of us. You know, maybe a generation down the road or a couple generations, maybe there'll be.
Well, I mean, not to get political, but we're more tribal now than we've ever been.
That's true too.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially in North America. I mean, like it's like, oh, you have a thought that might exist on the left.
It's North America now. We don't say the A anymore. North America.
America.
America. Anyways, I'm just saying, like it's you have an opinion and a thought that differs from mine. You're wrong, and
Yeah.
you're probably racist.
I mean, yeah, the whole cancel culture thing doesn't help anything. Yeah, we definitely are in a weird time right now where everyone has a voice and everyone thinks
The
their voice
worst
matters.
timeline.
And, you know, and coming from a podcast, it's hilarious to say that. But I mean, as much, you know, like I do this because I love it. One, I think my points are valid, but in no way do I think like I'm not preaching like, you know, like worship me. But people, you know, it does feel like at times that people think that everything they say matters and you should care about that. And I don't think they shut up. Are you kidding me? Like, calm down. You know, if like read before you hit enter, just read it back to yourself like twice, and then
There's also like a lack of education aspect to that too, though. 'Cause
yeah, for sure.
people will brought up on that, oh, my opinion matters type of thing, and to a degree, like again, back to subjective and objective. Your opinion doesn't matter on objective things. You can't have an opinion on how far it is from here to the moon. If you have an opinion that's different, you're a moron. Like that's the whole thing. That's a lack of education. Well, it's my opinion. No, you're an idiot. It's objective. It can be measured. Okay?
You're not one of
You
those,
don't have an
you're not one of those
opinion.
you're not one of those round earther people, are you?
I was gonna make the same. I was gonna make the same damn joke.
So, you know, it's crazy aspects like that. And then when it comes to opinion stuff, that's fine. But people have to understand opinions, who gives a shit? Like, you know what? Either take the person's opinion and go, okay, yeah, I agree with that opinion, or I like it, or it gave me something to think about. You know, or one of those. Like, it's great opinion, terrible opinion, gave me something to think about. That's it. That's all you should do with it. That's it.
No, you should fight.
Yes, that too.
Well, let me ask you guys something here, because there's been a comment that flew by a long time ago, and it was by Replay Factor here, and he said, I guess while I'm speaking of comments, Ryan said it already, but thank you so much to those of you who did the super chats out there. We were kind of engaged in the conversation, having a chance to backtrack on those, but maybe we will at the end of the chat here. But on that note, Replay Factor says the VR community doesn't need unity; it needs competition. That's what drives excellence.
Whoa!
Curious
That's
what do you guys think about that, though?
That's fine. Like I respect that opinion. We do need competition.
100%.
You know, 100% we need competition. Like we've talked about, Quest is too much of a driver, has too much control of the industry. So we definitely need competition. But it doesn't help, you know, when people are going tribal and just fighting each other and almost wishing for the other group to fail.
Yeah, competition should make the you know, like side A should make side B want to be better, and vice versa. Like competition should breed success is what should happen here.
But there's some people there's a lot of people who just want to win. And they don't care if they win by cheating or whatever the means are. They just want to win. They want their team to win. And there's other people who want to be better. And that's what we need. That's the type of competition we need. But we also need people to be accepting and be like, okay, I get it. You know, the PlayStation VR put out some good games. Cool. Quest, can you do that? You know, we want what they have. Not just, you know, F it, that sucks, I hope they fail. But again, in the grand scheme, does it really change, you know, toxicity in the community? Does it really have an impact on sales and the direction it goes? I don't know.
Well, you know, people said that the console wars that we all grew up with as kids were fun. I remember them at least as being fun. It was also a time before internet.
Social media.
Yeah, right. That being said, I'm curious what you think about this. Is that it just kind of dawned on me? I'm like, you know, maybe part of it was that, and we live in a world right now where companies are so afraid to offend or you know, do anything that isn't like inclusive. But at the same time, maybe part of the problem is that some of these companies need to get into a little bit of console wars and have some fun with it. Like, we always reference back on the PlayStation 1. I was a PlayStation 1 fanboy. I was an early adopter. And the idea of Crash Bandicoot driving his old truck up to Nintendo's headquarters and going, "What do you got, mustache man, plumber boy?" He's like, "I
Yeah.
got 3D graphics," and he pulls the tarp off. I'm like, or I remember a Sega commercial where someone throwed a PlayStation or throwed a Nintendo out a window.
Yeah.
Like Sega, and it was like those, like that was fun. And maybe like if these companies got into it, maybe it would make it worse than it ever.
It probably, yeah.
Yeah,
Probably.
I think
But
now it
think
would
it's
make it worse.
also- But the gaming market has just changed so much. It's just not the same. Like they're not making money off making the best games anymore. Most things are cross-platform. The vast majority is in DLC. That's a big aspect of development. The market has significantly changed. People saw dollar signs and kind of invaded it. So it has changed so much, and also the consumers changed. Like I hate saying this out loud, but I think we're a little bit too sensitive now for commercials like that.
What?
We are way too sensitive. You said even that you talked about. You're like, everybody thinks their opinion matters. It's like, yeah, because we've got this young generation of people that have been brought up saying you're a unique snowflake.
Well, it's sensitive, it's reactive, and you have a voice. Like
But
it's a deadly combination where you can
that's the
just
thing, we live in a world where not only do people think their opinion is super important, they also have a voice.
and
Like-
it's reaction. Like we've seen the whole cancel culture thing too. Is if you're not reacting, it seems like you're not. Like it's if you're not reacting, you're doing something wrong. Like you have to. Like is it? Do you like A or do you like B? Like, well, I
Pokemon.
actually.
And there's so much more power, if that's the right word, in having a strong opinion. When you say, guys, let's sit down and discuss the pros and cons of the Quest and the PlayStation VR 2, you already bored me. Done. I want you to say, PlayStation's the best. Screw you, Questers. I'm out.
That's our
Like
banner.
that-
Yeah.
That was way more fun.
Yeah.
Some of your biggest videos have been ones where you've like definitely taken a sizzled stance on something.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, I will do, and I do it on almost every headset. I will do like a reason why this headset is not for you type of video.
Yep.
Like, don't buy this headset until you watch. And I will just list out the problems with the headset. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just listing out the problems with that. And I will say up front, my personal opinion is I use this headset. I like this headset. However, you may hear online people are complaining. These are their major issues. And I do this with everything. I do this with a lot of things that are kind of just like hot topics. I even did it with Bone Labs, or Bone Lab. I did it with that game because that again we went kind of divided down the middle. Like people loved it, people hated it, whatever the case may be. And I said, listen, I think for what it was really good. I played through it twice. I enjoyed it. It's not the type of game I'm looking for. And, that's just me. It's just not the game I'm going to keep playing because I'm not looking for a sandbox. I'm looking for more depth. I'm looking for more storyline. I'm looking for, a lengthy campaign. An RPG is, something I would die for in VR where they don't make enough RPGs. But regardless, so I made that video and I went through like what people are complaining about when it comes to Bone Lab. Now, people got pissed at me and they're like, that's not true. This isn't true. Why do you hate Bone Lab? And I'm like, no, the first 30 seconds I said, listen, I enjoyed the game. I think it's good for what it is, but let's acknowledge some issues together. Now, I don't see that as hating. I don't see that as putting the game down. I don't see that as anything negative. A lot of people disagree, but I'll do that for a lot of things because nothing is perfect. I can find fault in anything, myself included. So, to go through this and discuss it, I think my intentions are positive. I think, I try and push everything and just like I kind of poke out the flaws and stuff so that everything can improve.
I
But
agree.
some people don't like that.
Well, some people don't like their bubble popped, I guess. I guess, I feel my answer, I think, to this whole we need competition. I agree. But we're still nichey in a lot of ways. And
Oh, yeah.
And like, like in the comments there, the Hookster there kind of basically said what I was gonna say, was that I've kind of, I've kind of always, I think, especially since I started to like have, all the headsets, and I guess have no reason at all to be defensive of one or the other. Ultimately, my team has become kind of VR. Now I play a lot of flat games too. I play a lot more
Yeah.
games than say like Ryan does. I'm a gamer. I love games. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like I still can't help but feel it's like whether you got a Quest or a PSVR or a PC or a Pico or a Gear VR, um, I'm sure there's still some Labo people out there that are just diehard. But at the end of the day, I'm like, we all love VR, and VR is very special to us in that we're passionate about it. And it's like there are over 100 million flat gamers out there who want what you love to go away and die because they think it's still we're still playing, Pong in VR.
Yeah.
And or they're afraid that it's gonna change the way that they game. That it's gonna make them have to buy a lot of spend money they don't have, or whatever the reasons are. There's a lot of people out there who do not want VR to succeed, and I feel like it's like we can't be fighting with each other about,
Yeah.
you have a cable, therefore your headset is shit.
It's funny you bring up this topic. I actually have a video coming out tomorrow. And it kind of just talks about VR is not for everyone.
Yep.
Now, again, I'm sure I'll piss off some people because no, if you like VR, you gotta be VR gung ho. You gotta be, hype, hype, hype. That's bullshit.
I don't agree with
That's
that.
not real. Yeah, it's not real. That's not the way the world works. So it's kind of a video like if you're looking to get into VR and you don't know anything about it, these are some things you should be aware of. Like, hey, you're gonna break a sweat when you play video games. That's something people aren't used to.
Yep.
Breaking a sweat, or like even little considerations like you're gonna wreck your hair, and have red marks on your face, so you might not want a VR game right before you like go out of the house. Little things like that to consider, and then much bigger things like if you're used to these blockbuster title games like God of War, and that's what you want, you're not getting it in VR right now. You're not.
Yeah.
There's a handful of amazing games and then just fun stuff. And like, I'm keeping it real and just like letting people know that. But that's where VR is. And I get it. I get it how some of these flat screen gamers look at VR, especially because I'm sorry, Meta is making VR look terrible lately.
Yep.
Like you see all this metaverse nonsense, all this stupid cartoony avatars and stuff. And you're like, that's not cool. What? Who thinks that's cool? Like, oh, I want to be a me character. That's what it looks like. It's the Nintendo Switch me character.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like.
And
So who wants that?
Yeah.
And then I'm sorry, but when you look at a trailer of a VR game, they tend to look, especially Quest One, they tend to look terrible. Now they're 20 times better in VR.
Yeah.
They look so much better in VR, but you can't capture that in a trailer.
See, it's
And
funny.
that's what you see.
I have the exact opposite problem with Meta in the fact that like they'll do the trailers like Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I'm like, it doesn't look like that. You're
I know.
lying to them.
Yeah.
And you know what? I had an issue too with them when they did their what's First Steps. The video they made is called First Steps. And they have renderings of Star Wars and Call of Duty and all these games. And I looked at that and like some people are like, oh my God, that's an amazing commercial for Meta. And I'm like, that is straight up BS.
Yeah.
But how do you counter that? The trailers look terrible and the games look so much better in VR. Do you counter it with fake CGI? I don't know if that's the right answer.
No.
You can't just put a disclaimer and be like, oh, we swear the game looks better in VR.
I actually think Sony was probably the most successful, even though it started to become almost a joke. But when they were doing their early market on the PSVR 1, and they were always doing almost the Iron Man inside the headset views.
Yeah.
Right. Like, at least I know what they were going for. They were trying to capture
gimmicky,
the
though,
emotion.
and that doesn't help, though. Yeah, but it gets gimmicky.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had them like sinking into the floor. I thought that like actually some of the marketing around Squadrons was pretty good in the fact that like there was like the guy sitting in the cockpit of the X-wing, and it was like I was like, yes,
I don't
that's
remember.
how I felt.
I don't remember the marketing, but I thoroughly enjoyed that game.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing, and I think that not to get off topic, but
We're off topic.
No, we're not.
Forget the topics.
We're almost done this topic anyways. So
Squadrons, I thought, same with GT7, are brilliant ways to market VR by instead of like trying to push it on people, pulling them, which is very like, marketing 101. And the fact that like you're sitting in a multiplayer lobby. I remember in Squadrons launch day, and I was like, and people could see that I was on a PSVR or a PC VR, and they were like, "Oh, you got the VR? How is it?" I'm like, "I'm sitting in an X-wing.
Yeah.
I'm literally sitting in an X-wing right now."
I was playing in my yaw.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah.
But like after an hour, I was streaming it one day, and like after an hour, I was doing like an objective mission, and I'm like, I can't follow the objectives anymore. I'm like, I'm seeing triple. I'm like, like I've been doing this for the past hour. Yeah. I'm like, and people are just like, no, go over. I'm like, I don't even know where the map wants me to go. I'm done. I'm like just burnt.
Yep. But that is again back
the
to
power of VR.
That is the thing about VR though. But that is why I 100% agree with your point around the fact that I think I went a little too hard when I first got into VR. I was like, it's VR. VR is the future. I mean, I still kind of feel like I think the future or the exciting future of gaming is probably going to be in VR, because why would you not want to? I personally, why would you not want to live inside these worlds?
Yeah.
But it doesn't work for every type of game, and you're never going to take the lazy out of it. I was a console kid. I grew up laying on a couch playing games. I still love lazing off out the couch to play a game. I don't necessarily want to spend 10 hours doing something on my feet.
It's true, but also, I mean, I know most gamers are younger than me, but I'm old. Now, I'm in really good shape, but I'm old. And an hour of some of these games, I'm done. Like I love Until You Fall, but an hour of Until You Fall may impact my day. Like I may have to sit on the couch for a little bit and just recoup.
3 races in Sprint Vector, and I was done.
Oh my god, forget that game.
Well, especially games that actually are not games, but rather like actual workout apps as well. They work. I mean, Les Mills is like kicked my ass some days.
I lost 20 pounds with Supernatural.
Right? Like they're no joke. Like VR is it can be work for sure, but it feels more satisfying at times. Like it does not all the time, but there's definitely that visceral connection with these worlds you just don't get out of VR. Which is, I guess, probably why we all love VR, which is why we're all here. So,
but, something that Wolveriza said that I don't necessarily agree with is he said he's like VR is too niche and in its infancy. We can't negative news about VR is shouldn't be out there. Like I don't believe in any censorship or that we shouldn't be talking. It should be constructive. Because can VR be better? Yes, it can be better.
Yeah.
I hate Apple. I hate Apple with a passion. Do I want Apple to bring out a headset? I really do.
Agreed. I completely agree with you.
One, I think it's huge for VR to see someone big like that get in. And as much as I hate Apple, what they're probably going to bring as far as a UI and fit and form, and just the they're not going to bring out a headset that is cumbersome to play and use. They're probably going to take the industry forward in a plug and play way that we haven't seen yet. And that's amazing for VR. And but we have to be critical of it. And, promoting clickbait shit articles that are that say VR is dead and we're like, oh, Meta lost all this money, but then and the industry and there were big tech insiders that were like, oh, VR is killing Meta. Okay, but if we actually break it down, Meta's losing a lot of money for a lot of failed projects that had nothing to do with VR that they continued to fund.
Yeah, Meta needed to pivot. They knew they needed to pivot, and they latched on to VR. Is it the right decision? Time will tell. But just going back to there should be no negative stuff out there. If every VR content creator and every VR news outlet and everything was just praise, would you believe a word they said?
VR would have died.
No, we call it, Ryan and I have called it toxic positivity. And I honestly think it's just that. It can be toxic if if especially if like I mean, obviously we see it in certain content creators who just love everything. Like you said, they only play what they love, so they only fanboy. They just not fanboy. It's not the wrong word, but their channel is just everything's amazing.
They look overly positive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I mean, you just have to take that for what they're putting out there. Not saying that they're lying or they're shills. I don't want
Yeah,
to be
you
that.
just have
I'm
to
not that
know
guy.
that's the person you're dealing with.
Mm.
Yeah, like they're out there to maybe they see it as like they're just a hype machine for VR, and that's what they want to be.
See-
Fine.
My whole thing is, if I think a negative aspect is interesting, that's why I talk about it. Like, if I think the broken part of something or the flaws of something is just an interesting conversation, that's the only reason why I talk about it. I'm not there to shit talk. I'm not there to belittle it. I'm not wishing it goes down. I think it's interesting to talk about the bad aspects along with the good aspects.
Yep. I think that was like, I mean, I put a video out around Grid Legends. It wasn't a review. It was a more of a, does this deserve all the hate? Because I'm seeing this game and I'm thinking this is pretty impressive for a quest racer that's offering all the content. Like I felt there was a conversation there than just shitting on it. And I thought that
Yeah.
was interesting. But from the critical standpoint, I think Ryan and I've always felt that like I was, I was pretty heated in my review around Saints and Sinners Retribution on the Quest 2. It
Yep.
irritated me that game was so broken.
Yeah.
Obviously Switchback bothered me. But it's not because I want to shit on VR and bring it down. It's like, no, do better.
Yeah.
I want you to do better.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely with you on that one for sure. But I'm definitely a cynical and jaded person. I've tried to be less and less over time. I think I'm doing a bit better, but I always look at something and be like, this is too good to be true. What's wrong with it?
Yeah.
And that's the information I'm looking for when I look for something. I'm not like, I don't want someone to tell me this is amazing, this is amazing, this is amazing. I want to hear what's wrong with the product. Then I'll decide if I still want it. So, like I said, when we first started this podcast, I said, I make the videos I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So, and that's the whole thing. I'm looking to hear what's wrong with the product. I want to hear what, like if someone likes it, what they like about it, what they hate about it, but I want to hear what's wrong. So I decide if I should spend my money on it or not, because that's ultimately what matters to me. Is it worth my money?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just going to sit there and go, it's amazing, it's amazing, it's amazing, I'm going to go, I don't believe you, or I don't trust your judgment. You're full of it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, as we're starting to close off the podcast here, I know it's late for you, and Ryan.
Yeah, I'm fading.
Yeah, and Ryan and Ryan keeps the bedtimes of a 10-year-old. I will.
It's a
I
parent. A bedtime of a parent, you dick.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
will. Hey, you know
That's
what?
the little one.
EAE said in there that he put his kids up for adoption to fund his VR habit. That's the type of dedication I expect from the two of you. What was I going to say now? Oh, I was going to say I think that you, as a kind of a closing to this, I think that you bring up an interesting point that I think that all of us struggle with in our own ways, who make VR content and have been doing it for a while, is that jadedness, is
Yeah.
the kind of, especially someone who reviews games. Ryan and I have often tried to check each other. I've been like, man, am I just hating on this because I'm just really getting done with quest games? Like, I'm just getting tired of all the
Yeah.
compromises and just not getting what I want. And it is that constant checking yourself, especially for all of us who have been around, because we've been through, like you said, the cycle of it's
Yep.
like, here goes VR, then the reset.
Yep.
Here it
And
goes
the
again, and the reset.
and the opposite is, am I not seeing flaws because I'm in the honeymoon period?
But that's exactly it. It's like, so we get the PSVR 2, and it's like, oh my god, premium VR again, 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Yeah, slow your roll. I'll be honest, I put on my PSVR, and it took a little while for me to enjoy the full package. Like, honestly, yeah, I immediately fired up Horizon, and the first thing I saw was the Mora effect. Like,
Yep.
horrendous. And I was like, oh no. And I'm like, come on, this is going to be people's first experience. And it's in the very like beginning scene where they have the mask on top of you in Horizon, and I'm like, oh my god, that looks like they pull the mask off, and I'm like that. Oh, and then I didn't see it anymore. But I was like, oh my god, that was my first impression. And then the pixel array, depending on what colors are on screen, you could. I'm sorry, you could see some aspect of a screen door effect. It's an aspect of the pixel array. People fight me on this, and then
I
I
agree
noticed
with
the
you.
yeah, and then I noticed the reprojection. And that was like a trifecta of issues. Then the next time I went to play, I couldn't get myself in the sweet spot, and then it was uncomfortable in my head. I had a lot of trouble with the sweet spot. Like my right eye kept falling out, so my right eye was blurry, my left eye was fine. I eventually learned how to wear the headset better. I'm in the sweet spot all the time. It's not pinching my head anymore. So that was resolved. I switched over to snap turning, and reprojection doesn't bother me anymore. So like once I got past these few minor little things, I was in and enjoying it and loving the game. I loved Horizon. GT7's great. So I'm really enjoying my time with my PlayStation, but I had a little trouble getting past those issues. Like it was never going to stop me from playing and enjoying, but I had to push a little bit to get past it.
And I guess I didn't. I mean, it's funny. My
Yeah.
first instinct, I put in GT7, and I started giggling.
Hmm.
And I mean, I had played the game a lot, so I just jumped into my favorite car, my favorite course, and I just started giggling. And what the giggle was for someone who plays quite a bit of sim racing on PC and VR, it's always a struggle to still, like, I mean, maybe not if you have a 49, you have a 3080, but even like a game like Project Cars 2 or some of the some of the other games like that are still graphically impressive, like Dirt Rally 2 or something, they're still like kind of playing with settings a little bit, trying to like dial in frame rate and resolution with the effects and
Yeah.
everything. And it's like, oh, now I've got a full grid, the frame rate's affecting again, because these are flat games that have VR options, so trying to dial in that VR mode and to just jump into GT7, I'm like, oh my god, holy
Yeah.
crap, it looks great. And I'm just like, and
Yeah.
it's so smooth, and it is working. It's just working.
Yep.
That was the
Uh,
giggle. It was the oh my god, this is so easy and it looks so good for no effort. And that's
yeah.
and to me, I guess that giggle was, I'm like, this is console VR. This is
Yep, I
And
agree. Same as me.
plug and play.
simplicity is
Yeah.
something I put on my list is a major positive.
Now,
You
did I start getting critical of all the things you just mentioned? I was like, oh, look at that. Oh, look at this. And I was like, oh, and on the sweet spot and stuff. But that did come after for me, and then now I've kind of gotten used to it.
yeah.
But again, that's what I mean. It's like this is the jadedness in the fact that like we've been around so long now that we have a lot of expectations.
Too easy to see flaws.
We're tired of things just not being what we want them to be,
Yep.
or feeling like a step back when they shouldn't be, in our opinion. And it's like, so it's like, again, it's like someone like you. It's like, I've never played Rush or Blood. Switchback's amazing. I had a
Yeah.
blast with it because there's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah.
And just like we've seen a lot of people in our community on this channel, PSVR 1 was their only headset. So PSVR
this is
2 was their next
amazing.
headset.
It's
Oh, yeah.
mind blowing. Yeah. Yeah.
Analog sticks.
Yeah.
Done.
And that's the whole thing too. Like, it's not easy to see some of these artifacts if you haven't experienced multiple different headsets. Like, I know people like always are up in arms about the God rays on like the Index, and they are horrendous. They never bother me. They never bother me. The only time I ever see them is a loading screen, and it's like, oh, those are some atrocious God rays. Then you get in game, and I never see them again. So that goes back to what we talked about earlier. Like, each aspect bothers us differently. Like, I'm very sensitive to latency. People are like, well, why don't you use a Quest 2 wirelessly? That's better than an Index. No, it's not.
I'm the same way. I can't do
Yeah.
wireless.
I can't do the latency. I try to get a balance between clarity. So you up the bandwidth, but then when you up the bandwidth, you get more latency. And I just feel it instantly.
Yeah.
If I pushed, I'm sure I'd adapt and get used to it. But I feel like I'm almost moving in like soup. Like, I could just feel that slight delay. I just feel, and I'm sure if I spent a few hours playing like that, I'd get used to it. But my brain goes, no, just throw your index on, and that issue's gone, and that's what I do.
So ultimately, I mean, what the entire conversation revolves around is, I think everything we've talked about boils down to expectations, and
Yeah.
and people trying to my request to people watching this and listening to this is, just keep in mind that your expectations could be vastly different than other people's expectations.
100%.
Yeah.
And your expectations on what they should think or what they should be experiencing can vary wildly depending on what their experience with VR has been, or like what they're sensitive to, or what they're willing to overlook. I mean, that case in point, Switchback, it's like there are a lot of people that are just enjoying the game. And like in the VR group, they're like, "Oh yeah, da 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 da," and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna shit on your guys' parade right now. I'm glad you're
Yeah.
like, I'm not gonna
But
point out to you the things I didn't like while you're sitting here loving it.
yeah, I mean, if someone's open to having a debate and they're like, well, why didn't you like it? Then go ahead and just and the person can go, okay, oh, I saw those issues, they didn't bother me.
Oh, if they're
Or
open to a debate, I'm
Yeah,
free
for
to
sure,
explain to them
100%.
why I'm right.
yes,
Yeah.
but then like, don't in like just inject yourself into someone's fun and try and ruin it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's toxic, and that, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Don't inject yourself into someone's fun. I love that. That's how we're ending this right now. I'm putting.
Is it the end? Yeah, totally. Because we are playing games.
Yeah,
Exactly.
We're playing video games.
You also shouldn't. You should never think under any circumstances this person should think this way.
Yeah.
You don't know what the hell's going on in their head. You should never think someone should think a certain way, especially the way you currently think.
And that,
You
ladies
should
and gentlemen,
you should never expect that.
is why you should follow this guy's channel right here. He's Matteo311. Matteo, thank you so much for joining this podcast. You've been an excellent guest. We'd love to have you back at some point in time. To everybody else in chat who joined this episode, you guys are awesome. To our super chatters, Salvador, Ramvis, and Griffin VR, we love you too. To our Patreon subscribers, we don't shut you out enough. You guys help us keep us going. Chris, any last words?
Well, I was gonna scroll up to see if I could grab the super chat and what they actually said in the comments, but it's gone. It's too late. It's past.
I should have got. It's okay. Yeah, Griffin, we'll find it.
I'll just echo with you guys saying, please go check out Matteo. If you guys haven't checked him out already. Ryan and I don't have anybody on here that we don't really enjoy ourselves, and that's the truth of it. Is we don't talk to anybody that we don't actually respect. So if we like him, then you should like him, because like we said, our opinion's better.
Yeah.
And Matteo, anything you have to leave us off with?
No, it's been fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Off to bed with you. It's like what?
Yeah, I'm gonna be out cold in 15 minutes.
Well, we appreciate you sticking up late for us. Your voice and your opinions on this has been invaluable. It wouldn't have been the same conversation. So with that, everybody, we are going to peace out, and we'll catch you next Thursday.
Hopefully.
Yeah. And pay attention to Saturday. We got a review dropping.
Woo! Later out.
Bye, everybody.